Whenever we're stuck in guilt and can't forgive ourselves, it's because, unfortunately, we have just placed ourselves in the role of God. Now, whether you're spiritual or not, what's the concept of spirituality or God is that regardless of what you've done, it doesn't matter. Even the most horrific thing, you're immediately forgiven. Well, even if you don't believe in a God or spirituality or religion, do you recognize that if you can't forgive yourself for making a mistake, that you are expecting yourself to be a God? You're expecting yourself to go completely against humanity and be perfect. Well, at least in my lifetime, I have never met a God. I have never met somebody perfect. We're all perfectly imperfect. And so, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to help you let go of that guilt and forgive yourself. And that's step number one, is to recognize that the second we hold on to a lack of forgiveness for ourselves and we stay stuck in guilt, that we have literally placed ourselves in the position of being a God. Now, I don't know about you, but that's definitely not a comfortable place for me. I don't want that responsibility. I don't think it's true. I don't like to live out of truth, and that's been my experience when people consider that for the first time of, wow, I guess you're right. I'm sitting here saying I'm unforgivable, but that does make me, put me in that God position, and I don't want that. And for many people, that one right there can snap them right out of it and open the door to their being able to forgive themselves, okay? So keep that in mind. That is the central theme here, okay? Let's move on to the next 4 steps in this. The next thing is to recognize that when we make a mistake, that at all times, we are always doing the best we can with the information we had at the time, with what we knew at the time. As we know more, we can do more. As we know better, we can do better. And even if we have the information and we choose not to take action on it, what that means is we're in the process of integrating that information. It hasn't become a hard-lined habit and skill. And so we're still processing that as I always talk about, knowledge, skills, and tools. We have the knowledge. We know exactly what to do. We're contemplating it. Maybe we've done it sometimes. That's the skill portion. But it's not a tool. It's not a habit. It's not something we just reach into that toolbox and pull out immediately. We're still on the journey. Life is about the journey. Remember, we're not a God. We're in the process. And so this is part of the learning to give ourselves grace and forgive ourselves and let go of the guilt, is to recognize at all times we're doing the best we could with the information we had at the time. As we know more, we can do more. As we know better, we can do better. And so there might be, and this is what I see with a lot of people who make mistakes, like a lot of people are hard on themselves about their relationships. They married a narcissist. I see that a lot. A lot of men or women going, God, I was with him for 25 years. Why didn't I learn about this till I was 50? And they feel tremendous guilt and even shame and can't forgive themselves. I wasted my life. No, you didn't. No one ever taught you. You can't be blamed. This is number 3. You are not to blame for something you weren't even aware of. You can't carry that blame. How could you be blamed? That's like asking you to build a space shuttle. Are you an aeronautical engineer? Have you worked with NASA for 30 years? Do you have any idea what it takes to build a space shuttle? So are you going to blame yourself that you're not out building space shuttles? Of course not. Are you going to blame yourself that you don't know how to build a bridge? Of course you're not. Are you going to blame yourself that you don't know how to build a car? Of course you're not. Why the heck would you blame yourself that you picked a person who was abusive or mistreated you? Did you take classes on relationships? Did you learn about shame? Did you know? Did anyone ever tell you that you just picked the trauma from your childhood, that that's all you're attracted to? Were you aware of that? That unless you go back and heal the pain from the past, you're just going to relive it? Did you learn that in high school or college? I sure as heck didn't. You're not to blame for doing something you weren't even aware of. And that's what I see people get trapped in, is they expect themselves to just have known. Well, that's not true, because we need to develop the knowledge, skills, and tools. That's why if you look at all my videos, I'm always talking about, like I have certain themes I beat over and over. Go become an expert. Gain the knowledge, skills, and tools. We're all struggling because we don't teach any of this stuff. We don't teach how to parent. And so as we become aware of this stuff, you know, for those of you that have watched me, a lot of people are sending me messages going, gosh, I wish I'd have known this earlier. The guilt's coming up. And I always remind them, you're not to blame. You did the best you could with the information you had at the time. What's amazing, and your children are incredibly lucky because you're 50, 60, 70, I've had messages from people in their 80s. I'm going, man, your kids are lucky because you're in your 80s and you're still trying to get better as a mother. You've got guts. That's the other thing to remember is, when you've never known about something, you've never had a choice. Do you see that? That terrible person you married, the terrible mistakes you made as a parent, or whatever it is that you can't forgive yourself for. Do you realize you never had a choice? Because you didn't have the knowledge, skills, or tools. Remember, if you're not aware of it, if you weren't even cognizant that there was another option, you're not to blame for something you weren't aware of. And so, if like a lot of people with the information I talk about, this is their first opportunity to hear this information. They never considered it. Do you realize what that means? Regardless if you're 18 and watching me or 88 and watching me, that day is the first day you actually have a choice in your life. You never had it. Never. That's why a God would give grace and go, look, you did the best you could. And that's what I'm trying to take ourselves out of that God complex role of I have to be perfect and into the receptive aspect of we are forgiven. We are always forgiven, no matter who we are, whether we believe in a God or not. Okay? Fourth step in this is, now that we've worked through some of the forgiveness aspects and we can get into reality that we did the best we could, we're not to blame, that for the first time in our life we have a choice, and that we're not God, we can now move to the action steps. And this is take ownership. Okay, now I am aware. I did make some mistakes, and so I'm going to own what those mistakes were. And I'm going to put a plan in place to address them. I'm going to gain the knowledge, skills, and tools to get better at this mistake, whatever it was. The way I treated a friend, the way I treated a partner, the way I treated my children. I'm going to go gain the knowledge because this is the first day I have the choice. And see, that's the thing you have to recognize is, while I never blame somebody for not knowing, that's why I don't blame parents. You know, all of our parents hurt us. I don't blame them. They weren't taught how to be a parent. They did the best they could. Now I lovingly hold them accountable. And for the consequences of that, that's love. But for those people who watch my videos, once you hear this information, remember what I said, this is the first day you have a choice. So from that day forward, for the first time in your life, you have a choice. That means you are now responsible. And so for all of you that watch me that haven't joined my free masterclass or all the tons of free stuff that I give, or even invested in yourself and bought my book or bought somebody else's book, because I'm always offering other people's books, and you know, I'm always offering all these different ways you can heal yourself. If you haven't made that commitment to start doing the work, well, that you're responsible for. For the first time in your life, you can hold yourself accountable and responsible, not blame. You don't blame yourself, but you are choosing not to gain the knowledge, skills, and tools. And therefore, you are completely responsible for the consequences of ending up with another narcissist, or your kids still not talking to you. You know, I get lots of parents reaching out to me. I'm broken. My kids won't talk to me. And I'm like, I give them options to help them. They don't want to do any of them. Well, I'm sorry. Now it's on you. You just chose not to heal. Well, that's a pretty narcissistic approach, to not do the work. Gee, I wonder why your child's a narcissist and doesn't want to talk to you. You just modeled it for them. And those are usually the parents that said, I was a perfect parent. I don't know what's going on. They're detached from reality of how much impact they've had. Again, I don't blame them. We don't teach this stuff. They're doing the best they can with the information they have at the time. But once that awareness is given to them, if they choose to ignore it, now I lovingly hold them accountable and responsible. And that is recovery. That is kindness. That is love. That is how we heal guilt and learn to forgive ourselves. Once we've put that plan in place, then we make amends, not an apology. Isn't an apology one of the worst things you've experienced in your life? Like, apologies originally were a great thing, but they're not what they are. They are no longer what they were intended to be. Apologies have turned into, as soon as I say I'm sorry, you're now responsible and obligated to let me off the hook and never bring it up again and never be upset by it. Like, it's over with. I apologized. I'm free and clear. There's no consequence. I don't have to go to jail or suffer any consequences. I'm just sorry. Be kind and let me off the hook. So in other words, an apology is a burden. It's a burden. I just got transgressed by you, and now I'm burdened by letting you off the hook, and you've never dealt with your stuff. That's what an apology is turned into. Well, I advocate and teach people how to make amends. And amends is take stock. What did I do? Where was I perfectly imperfect? These were my actions. Okay, now I need to put a plan in place to grow. I need to learn, why did I make that mistake? Why did I say, do, or believe that thing that I now regret and want to make amends for? What caused all that? So I need knowledge, skills, and tools so I can become aware of it. And then I need to put a plan in place to start healing it. So when I deal with couples and, somebody's had an affair, I'm like, what are you doing about it? Are you, in many cases, sex addiction has evolved. Are you part of a group? Are you doing the 12 steps? Are you doing recovery work? Like, what's your plan? And that's what I tell the offended spouse. I'm like, ignore everything they say, watch their actions. What are their actions telling you? If their actions show somebody who's put a plan in place and is acting on that, then you can trust again. Then there's, wow, okay, this person is serious about, they've taken ownership and recognized that they made a mistake and they're doing the work. And so when we do this process, we go to our partner and we say, look, I recognize I made some mistakes in these areas. Here's the process and plan I've put in place to deal with it. And so if and when it works for you, I hope one day we can repair this. But as of right now, I'm just letting you know what my plan is to address this perfect imperfection of mine and how I want to save and reclaim the relationship. Okay? That's the 5th step. So I'll recap them. 1, don't play God. Forgive yourself. You're perfectly imperfect and we all make mistakes. And so when you keep belittling yourself and not letting yourself, extending grace to yourself, you are acting as a God. Nobody that I've ever met is better than a God. And even if you don't believe in one, then you're still placing that role. So that's the first thing, is to recognize you're not God and therefore you are worthy of forgiveness. And if you keep saying, oh, it's unforgivable, I can't forgive myself, recognize that if you choose to go down, I'll let you go down that route, but every time you do that, you have just said to the other person, I'm God, I'm better than you, I know I'm not forgivable, and I'm above everybody. That's what you're doing. Okay, so that's step number 1. Step number 2 is to remind yourself, I did the best I could with where I was at the time. As I know better, I can do better, but it's incumbent upon me to gain the knowledge, skills, and tools. And that moves us into, we are not to blame for something we weren't aware of. We are always doing the best we could with where we are at the time. And once you become aware of new information, that is the first day in your life you actually have a choice. And from that day forward, if you choose not to gain the knowledge, skills, and tools, then you are responsible for the consequences. But anything before that, you're not to blame. You're just doing the best you could. But from that day forward, you can't claim that you weren't aware. Now you are. Okay? Then you move on. Step 4, take ownership and put a plan in place. Step 5, make amends. Don't apologize. All right? I'd suggest to all of you, please go to my YouTube playlist, The Worst Day Cycle. Watch the 5-part series. to learn about the worst day cycle, why you're stuck in this inability to forgive yourself. It's the 5-part series. The title of the videos are called Reclaim Your Authentic Self by Becoming Trauma Informed. You're going to learn in that worst day cycle why you're trapped in this guilt and this inability to forgive yourself. There's a lot going on here, and that'll help you do it. If you think this video will help somebody, please share it. Leave me your comments, and as always, enjoy the journey.